Welcome to the 2020 New Testament Challenge. Today we're in 1 Corinthians chapter 8. Paul is talking to the church about food that's been sacrificed to idols. Now he's answering questions they had given to him. Idol worship was huge in Corinth, and during that time of worship, food sacrifices were the regular part of what was taking place. And when those offerings were given, what did the temples do with all that food? They would sell it. They would sell it to the market. There were meat markets, and there were even restaurants there in the temple, if you would, where they could eat in the temple. And so Paul is dealing with, what do we do with this food that's been sacrificed to idols? He starts with a teaching, and he says that we know that idols are nothing, that they're simply man-made, that they have no power, there's no influence within themselves, it's just wood. But others, he said, belief is very powerful, and it influences the way that they think and how they behave. Therefore, we need to understand the difference. He says in verse 6 that we know that there is only one God, the Father, from whom all things came and through whom we live. And there is only one Lord, Jesus Christ, through whom all things came and through whom we live. He says that as believers, we know that there's only one true God, that all these other gods with a small g, they're nothing. There's only one true God who is to be worshiped, that has an influence over our life. But he says in verse 7 that not everyone understands this. For he says also in verse 7 that there are some that are so accustomed to idols that when they eat such food, they think of it as having been sacrificed to an idol. And since their conscience is weak, it's defiled. So Paul is saying then in verse 9, we need to be very careful that we do not exercise our freedom in such a way that we become a stumbling block to the weak. He says in verse 1 that knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. It's not about us, it's about others. And we need to put their needs before our own. Yes, we can know all kinds of things and we can live in such a way that we are different than everyone else. But for someone that doesn't understand what we know, it can be a stumbling block to them. He says, therefore, in verse 13, if I eat something and it causes my brother to fall into sin, I will never eat meat again so that I will not cause him to fall. Therefore, if I'm eating something that causes my brother to sin, I'm not going to eat it anymore. If I drink something that will cause my brother to sin, I'm not going to drink that anymore. If I go somewhere or if I do something that causes my brother to sin, Paul says, I will not go there or do that ever again, because it's more important that I help my brother than do what I know I can. Just because I have the freedom doesn't mean that I should. Knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. If it's all about me, I can be very prideful. I can puff myself up and say, I can do anything I want. I have the freedom to. But knowing that my brother is not where I am, I'm going to put all that aside. I'm going to live in such a way that I help him and I'm not a hindrance to him. Because knowledge, it can puff me up. But love will build me up because I'm thinking of someone else. Thank you for joining the 2020 New Testament Challenge.